Right, good morning everybody. The first thing I wanted to do today is just quickly review the cell theory from the video that you watched yesterday. And then we're going to move into the cell parts that you have to know for the end of course exam. Okay, so just to review the cell theory, remember that like all of these things probably seem like common sense to you now, but they didn't know these things until after they discovered the microscope and could figure out really tiny, minute details. So the first thing, all living things are made of cells. Cells are the basic unit of structure and function, and then all cells are made from pre-existing cells. Like they used to think that cells could just appear spontaneously out of nowhere. And of course, we know all that isn't true now. Okay? So then you also should have done a short little lesson on the difference between the two major categories of cells, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Prokaryotic ones are the simple ones, the bacteria, and then eukaryotic is everything else. So try to remember like these are the cells that are in you. Okay, so at a first for the diagram, the prokaryotic ones, the eukaryotic ones, don't they just look like they've got so much more stuff inside? So that means these are complex, these are relatively simple. Okay, our DNA is in a chromosome format, whereas their DNA is kind of circular. The most important thing, we have a nucleus, they do not. Okay, we both have ribosomes. This is the only thing that has a mitochondria. They can both have a cell wall, and they both definitely have to have a cell membrane. But remember, the cell wall, which we'll learn today, is only for plant and fungi cells. But it is a possibility. Okay, so technically this could go here or here because these have to have that. All right. Okay, so guys, these are the sorry you can't see that. These are the 7 or 8, I guess I should say, cell parts that you have to know. Okay. These are the ones that are fair game on the EOC. It's these 7. I just added the cytoplasm in there a few minutes ago, because I actually have seen them refer to that. So I want to make sure I put that up there. And I will print this for a PDF so you don't have to worry about writing these things down. Okay? So I'm going to go over each one of these as we look at it on this picture here. All right? Okay, so please keep in mind now that we are focusing only on the eukaryotic cells. Okay, so that means they are complex. They do have a lot of stuff on the inside. They do have a nucleus. Their DNA is inside of there. And they have all these cell parts that do these individual jobs. Okay? So, and I'm going to print this in a PDF format for you too, so you'll always have it. These are very similar pictures to what would be on the EOC. It won't get any more complicated than this. Okay? So not only do you have to be able to recognize the cell parts, you also have to know their function. Okay? Then on top of that, you have to know the difference between plant and animal cells. Like what do plant cells have that animal cells do not? And you have to have like a general comparison of them, kind of like how I have them lined up here. Okay, so I'm just going to do these kind of in order. So animal cell on the left, plant cell on the right. Generally speaking, the animal cells will be round, but I'm going to show you a variety of cells in a minute. And plant cells are normally more rectangular-ish, more geometric kind of, and they will always have this double membrane here. One's a membrane, one's a wall, whereas animal cells only have this one particular membrane. Okay? So let's start with that. The cell wall, it's a material, it's made out of cellulose, like that stringy stuff that's on celery. That's why I can't stand celery. Okay? It is only in plants, and it is also in fungi and bacteria. But see how it has a double layer here. So that's the wall. It's for protection, gives it structure and support. Okay? The cell membrane is the one on the outside of all cells, and then it'll be the first layer on plant cells. And what a cell membrane does, it discriminately allows things in and out. So think about what you need every day to survive, and it's very similar to a cell. You need oxygen, you need water, you need nutrients, and then not only that, you also need to get things out. Waste products, carbon dioxide, poisons, etc. So that's the cell membrane's job, is to allow things in and out of the cell. Okay? Then the nucleus, it's usually the largest thing inside of there other than a vacuole. This is where your DNA is, and it stays in there until it's ready to replicate. It's the control center, so it's almost like a mainframe computer that controls everything. Or if you want to use another analogy, it would be like the principal of the school, because it's the one that controls that. Okay, so that's the nucleus. The ribosome we have touched on a little bit when we did DNA transcription and translation. Ribosomes make proteins. Okay, so that's what makes proteins for structure and support, and it's also what makes the proteins that turn into your genes. All right, so just think ribosome, protein. Some people call it a ribosome, so think that ribs are protein, if that helps you. All right, the next one is a vacuole. And what a vacuole does, it's a storage sac. So 9 times out of 10, it's probably just water, okay? But there are special vacuoles that store waste products, that store starches, that store other materials that the plant or animal cell may need, okay? And this is one of the things that's the difference between plant and animal cells. We have several small vacuoles, whereas a plant cell normally has one large central vacuole. And if you've ever seen a plant that is wilted, right, looks like it needs some water, that means their vacuoles are empty. So another role for a vacuole in a plant cell is to keep the leaves upright. Okay, and don't think of it like a plant needs more water than an animal, and that's why it has a larger vacuole. It is because a plant can't just go get water when it needs to, right? It has to rely on us or Mother Nature or whatever. Okay? Now, the mitochondria is probably the one you guys recognize the most from middle school, and you might remember it as the powerhouse, which doesn't help you much. Just remember the mitochondria is what gives the cell energy. And we will do photosynthesis and respiration later on, but the mitochondria is the place where respiration occurs. So that's where you take energy and you burn it, and you give you take sugar, you burn it with some respiration processes, and then it gives you lots of energy. So muscle cells, for example, would have way more mitochondria than like a fat cell. Okay? So each of these cells is going to be unique. It's going to have different things depending on its function. All right? And then the other thing that makes this cell different from this cell is a chloroplast, and it's a little photosynthesis factory. And that's all you need to remember about that. Okay? So just talking about the differences between plant and animal cells, the plant cell will have 2 extra components to it. It'll have the cell wall and it'll have the chloroplast. Notice the animal cell doesn't have either one of those things. Okay? All right, so let's just practice a little bit because you guys have to be able to recognize these things. All right, so this one here, it looks like a jelly bean kind of, and it has a maze in the middle. That's the mitochondria. I hope this makes you think of just a drop of water. That's the vacuole, okay? This is pointing to the nucleus. All right, this is your chloroplast, okay? All these dots are ribosomes. It makes the cell look like it has chicken pox. This is a blown up version of the cell wall. Of the cell membrane. Okay, this one here is the cell wall. It actually looks like a wall. Okay, you probably remember these from our genetics unit already. Those are our chromosomes, which if you unwind, that's your DNA. Okay, and then just the empty portion of the cell that's very watery and fluidy is the cytoplasm. Okay, so let's do the functions. Lets things in and out. That's your membrane. Okay, controls all activities. Remember, that's like the brain. That would be the nucleus. Stores food, water, waste. The water, I hope that one gives that away for you. Vacuole. Photosynthesis. Chloroplast will be green. Not on your EOC because it's only black and white. I wish it was. Okay, burn sugar for energy. That's your powerhouse. Your mitochondria. Okay, watery, propels the organelles around is your cytoplasm. Protects the cell is your cell wall. And then contains genetic information would be your chromosomes. And then makes proteins are your ribosomes. Okay, so guys, those 7 or 8 are really just strict memorization. So do whatever you can to memorize those. Okay, and let's take a closer look at some of them while we have a little bit of time left. Here's the nucleus. and the nucleolus, which you guys don't have to know, is down in there in the center, and then your DNA or chromosomes would be around here. So if you want to think of it like a peach, okay, like a fresh peach, the skin would be like the nuclear membrane, the flesh of the peach that we eat is where we keep our DNA, and then the pit is the nucleolus, which you guys don't have to know that particular part. Okay, some other close-up views. The cell membrane, which we'll discuss much later on, so I want to avoid him right now. The mitochondria will look like a jelly bean kind of, and the maize on the inside gives it away. That increases the surface area so you can get as much energy out of each morsel of sugar that you can. The chloroplast is similar to the mitochondria in terms of shape, but it won't have a maize in the middle. It'll look like it has stacks of coins or stacks of pancakes in there. That's what gives him away. Okay, the ribosomes are just the dots. I don't want you to focus on this other maze-like structure here. The vacuole will really look like an empty storage sac. And then the cell wall will always be the thing on the outside of a plant cell. Okay, remember the membrane's in here, the wall's out here. Okay. All right, and some other cell parts that I want to show you just really quickly, that we've talked about some of these already when we did unicellular organisms. The flagella is like a 1 or 2 tails. Okay, that one's easy to remember. Cilia are several little hairs around here, and that's what they use for movement. It's kind of like what's in your nose, right? Your nose hairs that trap dust and stuff, but these help this guy move. A contractile vacuole. So we've done vacuole, right? That's what stores water. Some of these guys have a contractile vacuole here, which can actually force water out. Here's a picture of one here. Okay, so that way it can stop itself from exploding. There's too much water in there, it can just stop. This euglena guy here, this red thing here, is called an eye spot. It's like an evolutionary advantage where it can detect sunlight. It can't see his buddies around him or anything like that, but it can detect light. And since he does photosynthesis, that would definitely be an evolutionary advantage. Okay, and then we already talked about plasmids the other day when we did genetic technology. It's just a ring of bacterial DNA that we can manipulate. Okay? All right, and the last thing I wanted to show you on this screen here is that not all cells look alike. Okay? Every cell in your body has a different function, so therefore it's going to have a different shape. Just like you might have different wrenches or sockets for different bolts or screws or whatever. Okay? Each one has a different shape to go along with its job. So like muscle cells are long and thin and fibrous, and they can stretch and come back to shape. Okay? Whereas fat cells, all they do is store. So that's what they're designed to do. Okay, bone cells are designed to be stronger. Nerve cells are designed to communicate, right? Stem cells are designed to become any kind of cell that they need to. All right, so just keep in mind that even though the things on the inside are similar, their shape and function are different. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and let you practice with some of these cell parts. Okay, try to memorize them. Try to memorize their function, their name, and what they look like in a cell. Okay? Thank you. If you guys have any questions, please email me or call me.